Hello wrestling fans, the Wrestling Wizard here and welcome to another video. Just a fun video today. We're going to look at 5 cases for why the Fiend Bray Wyatt could potentially return to WWE as soon as this year. But before we do that, I will start off by saying no matter what decision Wyndham makes in regards to his future, we must respect that. It's so easy to be needy, to be wanting, to be selfish in a way, like demanding that he comes back to WWE. But it's got to be the right decision for him, physically, mentally, and emotionally. He's got to be ready to invest in such a big decision. So we must respect that. Also, be really appreciative if you can like this video, really helps the channel out, or subscribe if you're new. I promise I've got some awesome content coming up. So let's look at case number 1 for why he could come back to WWE. Now, quite simply, I'm going with The Undertaker on this one, and you might think, what on earth is this about? Well, The Undertaker was asked a really interesting question at WrestleMania Access, and the question was simply, in your prime, who would you have preferred to have wrestled? Sting or Bray Wyatt? And without hesitation, Undertaker said Bray Wyatt. He put him over massively, said he was a huge talent and hoped that he could sort things out, we're assuming with WWE, and come back home. He made that very clear. Now we know how close The Undertaker is to Vince and vice versa, and you can't help but think at some point The Undertaker has mentioned this to Vince. What a valued commodity Bray Wyatt is to WWE. Whatever happened behind the scenes, we'll never truly know the ins and outs, but basically just praise him to the moon and say that, look, you need this man back. Now, I personally feel that it'd be more Bray's decision. I think that Vince would actually welcome him back with open arms, but they need to come to some sort of negotiation, Bray and Vince, and creatively need to get that freedom back, which we'll come on to in a moment. Now, one of the best moments of my wrestling life, if you like, as a fan, was November the 9th, 2015, when I was in Manchester. There was a Raw there, and I saw Bray Wyatt for the first time in person, and I was mesmerised. How good he was on the mic, the charisma, how he could just carry the crowd like he did. And then The Undertaker and Kane came out. He made a return, and literally seeing that entrance and seeing the interaction between the Brothers of Destruction and the Wyatt family, I'll never forget that. But what it proved to me is, obviously, The Undertaker, one, he obviously clearly enjoyed his work with Bray Wyatt. He massively rates Bray Wyatt. He's going to put him over. It's got to be an influence somewhere. Surely those two have had a conversation at some point. So that's my first point. Second point, Untold Storylines. And in a nutshell, you got the Alexa Bliss situation, the whole Sister Abigail-esque thing that happened at WrestleMania 37 when she cost The Fiend the match against Randy Orton. Randy Orton himself, Drew McIntyre. There were apparently supposed to be plans before Bray Wyatt left for a Fiend Drew McIntyre feud, which would have been quite cool, I think. You could revisit Finn Balor, have a demon Finn Balor versus The Fiend, because of course those two are 1-1 in their SummerSlam matchups. Of course, Finn Balor beat Bray Wyatt, but then The Fiend beat Finn Balor. So could we see The Fiend versus the Demon? That would be amazing. And also Roman Reigns. And to be honest with you, I don't even care about the belt. I just want to see some sort of form of redemption for coming out and attacking him at SummerSlam, calling him a freak in a mask, and then taking his belt, albeit he wasn't pinned, it was Braun Strowman, taking his belt the following pay-per-view. I'd just like to see him come out and mandible claw the heck out of Roman Reigns and let him know he's boss. And Orton comes in RKOs, and Bliss comes in with a Sister Abigail. Just some form of redemption. But of course, he's got to have the creative freedom to do that. Loads of untold stories that would be amazing. Third case is, for me, the Fiend alter ego especially is a WWE-esque product in the sense of the way they book it makes it live up to its potential. And I mean down to the entrance, I mean down to the props, down to the creative bookings and the flexibility and the time that they can invest in a dynamic and individual and niche character like The Fiend. WWE do it best. Now, it wasn't an issue with the presentation of The Fiend that led to some questionable decisions. It was more the booking creatively. So you know that they're going to have the props, they're going to have you know, whatever, even if he was to change his theme, you know it's going to be badass. If there's an evolution of the Fiend, you know the makeup and the mask and the props are just going to be on fire and on a level unmatched, in my opinion, in another promotion. Now, I'm a massive fan of AEW and other promotions, but I just can't see a character like the Fiend fitting into AEW. I think it's more appropriate towards, in line with WWE and their values, to be honest with you. And I think few could argue that. Which brings us on to my fourth point. Cody Rhodes and other wrestlers are now contemplating joining WWE from AEW. And I say that because there will be more to come. But that's not the point I'm trying to bring up here. The point is, Cody Rhodes, the last time we saw him in WWE, was booked questionably. All right? He was Stardust, for crying out loud. WWE and Vince didn't see any value in him. And he went away, reinvented himself, and came back as the American Nightmare and presented the way that he wanted to be presented creatively. He's got a lot more control than he had before. Now, the Fiend and Bray Wyatt in general doesn't need changing. Like, it's already a ready-made act that was ready to go. WWE don't have a problem in investing in that. Of course they don't. You know, he got some decent matches in as the Fiend. But to come back with even more creative control, as much creative control as he had in some of his early Firefly Funhouse segments. I mean, he had Vince McMahon as a puppet himself. I mean, come on, that's control. To get that back, to rewrite a lot of the wrongs and the creative mistakes that WWE made in the past, they can get it right with Cody. They can get it right with the Fiend, which is why I always feel there's room still to return in the future. And I don't feel it'd be the same. Losing to Goldberg, having that dodgy match at Hell in the Cell, you know, it can all be a thing of the past. And in terms of timing as well, at the moment, it's Roman Reigns' time at the top, right? Roman Reigns is the showpiece man in WWE at the moment. We're going to do a video on that separately as well. So timing-wise, down the line, we're talking more SummerSlam sort of time, which would make a lot of sense. We saw the debut of The Fiend in ring at SummerSlam of 2019. Could we see him return at 2022? It's got potential. Creatively, there could be better decisions moving forward. And finally, that brings us on to the final point, the fans. The fans would welcome him back in WWE with open arms, no question. We're pleading for him to come back. It was many of the reasons why it got people back into watching WWE again. Many people would say to me, you know, the Fiend got me back into watching WWE again. And it did me, to be honest with you. It's getting a bit stale for a while, and suddenly something completely new came along. It was amazing, and I honestly was putting him up there with like the Kane and Undertaker. Like, initially I thought, if this guy is booked properly, don't ruin anything with this character. It could be huge. And things ultimately didn't go according to plan the first time round with the Fiend, but things could definitely be evolved second time round. We might not even see the Fiend come back. It might be another genius idea that Bray Wyatt has up his sleeve, but just imagine it. Also as well, I'm going to be a bit selfish as well. On September the 3rd, WWE have announced that a major event will be held in England, and I'm from England. Well, not in England, sorry, correct that. A major event's going to be held in Wales, in the UK. I'm from England, so obviously that's not far to go, and I will be there 100%. And imagine if it was in time for a Fiend return to WWE. Like, that would literally be a box ticked off, a bucket list box. It was always to see the Fiend, and I haven't seen the Fiend in person. I've only seen Bray Wyatt in the Wyatt family alter ego 3 or 4 times. So to see the Fiend, from a selfish point, from a fan perspective, from Wyatt fans, we'd love to see you. We'd love to welcome you home. Honestly, imagine it, the Fireflies. The pop would be incredible. Thank you so much for watching the video, by the way. I really appreciate it if you got this far. I know I tend to go on and on and on, but I'm quite passionate about it. Massive fan of the Fiend, and I would love him to come back. That's just my personal take. Be really appreciative if you could like the video, share the video, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you in another wrestling video.